With these partnerships, we hope to see a better future, better ways of doing things. I'm not here to tell us how this is going to happen, but before I invite our host, the CEO of the Nairobi Securities Exchange, we have an introductory video. I would like us all to pay attention on the screens and watch it. Let's have the video, please.
Predicted by those who govern themselves, and to the dismay of those who lacked foresight. Risk management has become a necessity in ensuring that companies don't just stay afloat, but operate and adapt, knowing that any crisis would allow them to transform and not affect their sustainability. Around the world, businesses have taken into consideration the environmental, social, and governance principles as a critical consideration into their strategies. But the outliers outweigh the flexible, and this is no different in our own continent. Having the most diverse population, rich in natural resources, and exporting million tons of precious metals and commodities per year, it's time that Africa takes the forefront in leading the world in a new level of prosperity. However, many issues still persist on our continent, including poverty, crime, gender-based violence, corruption, the mismanagement of precious resources, and low corporate governance. As Africans, we need to recognize the value our continent can provide and evolve our business practices not just for wealth, but for the prosperity of societies and generations to come. Now, we have the tool that is built by Africans for Africa and the globe.
So the ESG GPS model is not just a one-size-fits-all. We want companies not just to go from good to great, but to be built to last. That's all about sustainability.
It has already started shaping companies to become inclusive of the ESG landscape in South Africa and Nigeria. And now, we look to Kenya to continue and progress Africa's drive towards sustainability and move Africa towards global alignment to net zero.
There you have it, and that just introduces exactly the conversation today. To help us understand what this launch is all about and the partnership is none other than our host, the CEO at the Nairobi Securities Exchange, our host today, Geoffrey Odondo. Please put your hands together for him as he comes to address us on the ESG and the key priorities in East Africa. Karibu-san.
Thank you very much, Maina, for your introduction. I'd like to say, first of all, good morning. Good morning. I know it's still a very chilly season, quite unlike any other we've seen in Kenya. And again, it's very refreshing to say that we're sort of having a fresh start after the elections. And for us, that presents a great opportunity. So I'd like to say thank you very much for really making attendance here, and also for all those joining us online. Welcome to the Nairobi Securities Exchange. We're always happy to host you here. And ours is to say karibuni to the, should I say, the bed of money, and really a warm place to be. So Andre Bogendorf, I hope I got the name right, CEO of the Risk Insights, Alexandria Rafal, Charles Modua, I saw him coming on the screen, CEO of the Stanbic Bank, Nicholas Mulila, CRO and Head of Security at Safaricom, Edward Kerich, PwC Partner and Director. I've seen my friends from the Nation Group as well. Welcome all of you to the NSC, and also my esteemed fellow speakers who will be speaking here. So good morning. So for us at the NSC, it's a great pleasure to really host you again, and very happy to be having this partnership formalized today. And we're really formalizing a collaboration that's really aimed at improving our overall social and governance strategy in Kenya, and more specifically, the ESG practices that we have for listed companies. The NSC is a member of the United Nations Sustainable Stock Exchanges Initiative, which is a peer-to-peer platform that allows us to collaborate on various things around sustainability. And sustainability is a very big thing for the exchanges because we act as a very key driver of these ideas among our listed companies, because this is the one platform that a lot of companies that you're able to actually see very transparent initiatives being driven. I mean, we've got all these companies in the country, but the one transparent platform is an exchange. And that's why exchanges have taken this as a very key initiative. So last month we announced a partnership with Risk Insights, and which is a leading ESG data provider in Africa. And this collaboration is basically aimed at driving our sustainability agenda jointly through providing access to ESG ratings, disclosure of information, news, and strategic business intelligence for NSE-listed companies. And on the account of these partnerships, we'll be able to collect, measure, and analyze corporate sustainability disclosure data. I was telling Andre and the group that this morning we have already put in place an ESG manual out in the public, both for listed and unlisted companies. Because for a long time, companies have been doing all these things in their own way. So if you want to see what Safaricom is doing and see what EABL is doing, they've all got their own ideas on what they're doing around ESG, but there's no standard measure of doing it. But the manual then helps you, have some level of standards, even how it's measured, how to report your sustainable initiatives in some form or format. So taking this forward through data and being able to analyze standard data is even now taking us to another level. So it's going to be very easy for anybody to really be able to see how to benchmark one company to the other and even help improve the overall ESG initiatives in organizations. So ESG is a key priority in Africa and the world as well. I think for a long time these ideas around climate change, health, we consider those as secondary issues, until the COVID-19 pandemic stepped in. That's when we saw that it actually has business disruptions. All right. To date, we're still wearing our masks. We're still bowing, greeting guys. You have to wonder whether you should or not. It's not the normal African thing. We used to actually hug each other and everything. All that has disappeared. Work is still hybrid, for instance. And all this is because of what happened in 2020, 2021. And even climate change. I mean, in this country, this is normally a very warm season. We normally have our little summer at this time of the year. We're now experiencing winters every morning and the cold weather. And it's having a serious effect, not just on our lifestyles, but even on our agriculture and the persistent drought we're seeing today. And all these are matters relating to the environment. We've not taken good care of the environment, not only here, globally. The rising temperatures that we're seeing globally. The other day I was seeing that one of the glaciers is melting in the Arctic Circle and the size of Florida. And all this is going to have issues. So continually, we're going to be seeing these kind of challenges on the environment. On the social side, we're talking about the social health issues. We've just spoken to that. Again, big challenges. On the governance side, we've got big issues on corruption. We've got concerns around equality, So all these are matters that we can no longer take for granted. We have to actually step in that space and see what we need to do. So for us and other organizations, to counter this, we must integrate ESG considerations into our corporate and investment initiatives and activities, and internalize ESG holistically to enable us build trust and ensure long-term sustainability, agility, and competitiveness. The organizations that are going to be standing tall in the future are those organizations that are agile, that are able to be more adaptive to new ideas, innovative, and being very, very forthright in terms of adoption towards ESG. It's a big thing. So in larger jurisdictions, I've seen Nigeria and South Africa being the initial places where this collaboration is happening. We believe that having it in Kenya as well is going to help us strengthen this. Because ESG on the continent has gained very good traction. In Kenya, we started off, for instance, with the Capital Markets Authority Stewardship Code in 2017. In Nigeria, there was a code of corporate governance that was introduced in 2019. And in South Africa, we had the King's Code of Corporate Governance. It was called the Code of Responsible Investing in South Africa. And so it's really something that has gained currency. And more is happening, including in Rwanda and Morocco, who are currently developing ESG structures. And also in Egypt, from 2023, it's going to be mandatory. The companies must file annual ESG returns. So we're seeing there's a lot of currency in these ideas, and it's moving forward. I think in Kenya here, just to give a few examples, the Kenya Bankers Association in 2013 introduced what they call the Sustainable Finance Initiative. And these were more or less harmonized guidelines for sustainable development. So they put out guidelines out there for banks to comply with ESG matters and entrench these into their operations, and focusing on even matters including climate change and environment-related financial risks. These are factors that they've actually tried to advance. And a lot of banks now are actually have put these initiatives in place. And why it's important for them is that there's going to be a lot of requirement on funding for climate-related investments, and that's why I think it's very important that they did that. So in Kenya, of course, now we do have this a reporting template and a corporate governance scorecard, and this was developed for purposes of measuring and monitoring the application of the stewardship code, as mentioned earlier. So based on this, the NSC also went a step forward and came up with the ESG disclosure manual and reporting guidelines in 2021. And it really helps companies in their interactions with investors and the wider financial community to aid them understand how to address ESG issues as they undertake their investments. Now, in the past, we've all been focusing on the profitability of companies. So the company with the highest profit is the one we would say, oh, this is a company we need to invest in. But the question we should never ask is, how did they make the profit? All right? Did they slash costs of staff? Did they, Did they impact on their investors by putting some very extremely low quality products or saving on those kind of things? So it's very important for us to understand how they made their profit. And that can come through proper disclosures. So that's why we thought this manual was very, very important, so that you don't just not go out there and speak about how you made it. I mean, speak of the profitability, but really help investors understand how you made it. Because you could be making this profit, but is it sustainable? Or is it a one-off? So that's why putting out these disclosures is so important, including the risks in the business. I mean, are you operating in a very high-risk environment, for instance? Are you impacting on the environment? Are you creating all these sorts of negative impact on the environment? Very, very important. So the CBK, Central Bank of Kenya, also published guidelines on a guidance note on climate-related risk management, hence putting the banking sector in Kenya also on the front line towards driving a low-carbon future. And this guideline actually contains requirements for banks to really adapt to and effectively integrate climate-related financial risks in their management frameworks. The insurance sector as well have signed a number of declarations around sustainable insurance, and we see this as something going forward. So you can see every sector has sort of tried to embrace this, all right? Has tried to embrace ESG in one way or another, regulation, policy, and all this kind of thing. And so I think it's something that is important. Just today we were discussing how Japanese organizations make ESG so central to every decision making, and I think Nicholas will be telling us more about that. It's a good change of mindset that before I touch anything, is it ESG? What's the ESG impact on it? that helps me comply. Just yesterday we were having a discussion with my colleagues in the office about the introduction of a mobile device policy, and some of them were saying it has a social impact on my life. Why do you want to know what's in my mobile phone? And you're like, but you're getting emails of the company there. And they said, okay, fine, buy as a company mobile phone, so that my private life remains my private life. I thought they were being a bit difficult until I had that's a solution that some companies have taken. So I think this is ESG is becoming a very important thing, even in our way of life. So going forward, we expect to see more regulators put in place frameworks that are going to make this happen, and I can see fairly shortly moving from voluntary to mandatory. So the sooner you comply, what we always call advanced compliance, the better. And so I think it's something that's going to be helpful. So as a sustainable exchange championing Africa's growth, our partnerships with Risk Insights is aimed at enabling listed companies align as much as possible with the existing sustainable standards to create a global common language and metrics. The advanced data analytics is now available on the NSE website, and we will help companies undertake this initiative even as we have our engagement to enable them meet the ESG goals. I think eventually what the NSE wants to do is to have a sustainability index. And so companies that are currently doing the ESG, you'll not only be measured by the NSE 20, NSE 25, NSE all share indices, but you'll also have a chance to be put on an ESG index, which I think will now even put you at a premier position to the rest of the company. So I just want to encourage our listed companies to really embrace this excellent initiative. So in conclusion, because I think we have a long day, or rather a long hour, sorry, I want to say that NSE continues to play a key role in contributing to ESG as stakeholders in Kenya and in Africa and around the globe. And we want to help in the transitioning to a carbon neutral environment through reducing our carbon footprint. As the NSE, we're also championing the development of a carbon market, which I think is something that you should be expecting in a year or two. And we believe this will be part of our own efforts to facilitate all this big agenda towards creating a net carbon environment. And we're also doing things like green bonds and other things to make that happen. So as the regulatory sustainability landscape continues to evolve, I want to assure all stakeholders that NSE will keep tab of this and really ensure that we remain relevant as we go through this. So mine is to say welcome today, welcome Risk Insights. I like calling them RI to Kenya and to NSE, and we look forward to a great partnership with you and our other stakeholders in ensuring that we make our ESG initiatives a great success. Thank you very much, and karibu.
Thank you so much, Geoffrey Odundo, the CE at the Nairobi Securities Exchange, for those remarks. Please allow me to appreciate all our online guests. I understand some of them are from Switzerland, Kenya, a lot of them are in Kenya, definitely, South Africa, Japan, and more. Thank you so much for even letting us know where you are. At this moment, I want to introduce our next speaker who will be joining in via video. But allow me to just read a quick intro about him. That's none other than Alexander Raffo, currently the Head of Regional Business Strategy and Growth, Head of Business Engagement for the Middle East and Africa, and member of the Executive Committee of the World Economic Forum, responsible for the strategic direction, execution, and impact of business partnerships across a variety of geographies. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the screen, and let's hear from Alexandra.
We welcome the opportunity to contribute to this important discussion and partnership launch between the Nairobi Securities Exchange and Risk Insight, a very dear valued member of the World Economic Forum. Africa is very close to the many activities that we undertake at the World Economic Forum because of the sheer potential for impact that our activities and that led by our members and partners have. Africa has some of the fastest growing economies and companies in the world, and the continent enjoys, as we all know, a wealth of natural and human resources. But for many international investors, business models and structures in Africa have yet to implement sustainable values to ensure the security and returns of global investment. The attitudes towards ESG imperatives in Africa have not developed quite at the same pace as they have in other parts of the world. That's why it's particularly great to see that countries like Kenya are moving fast and adapting to top global standards, let it be by issuing green bonds, as well as striking partnerships just like the one that brings us together here today. The global adoption of ESG criteria represents a true opportunity for African economies and their companies to attract a new pool of greener, more sustainable investment into their economies. The rise of responsible investing over the years and decades rather has translated into an increasing pool of investors that are seeking businesses that have long-term sustainable strategies, and they're allocating their funds according to very well-defined ESG criteria. Investors, lenders, rating agencies, and other stakeholders expect more transparency on financial and non-financial metrics to better understand the risks and the uncertainties that are associated with their investments. And ESG data, thankfully, does create that clarity to drive sound decision making. And one could easily argue that its importance is exacerbated in Africa, where investment opportunities are still, unfortunately, typically accompanied by higher degrees of uncertainty. I'm thinking, for example, of the risk associated with climate change, which are exacerbated in Africa. And data points to the fact that consequences of climate change could reduce Sub-Saharan Africans' GDP by as much as 3% between now and 2050. One of the key competitive advantages of Africa is also its labor supply. Being the youngest continent in the world puts Africa in a privileged position to leapfrog into ESG adoption, as attitudes towards ESG are typically driven by younger generation. They want to run, work, and invest in businesses that have a clear sense of mission and a purpose and responsibility tied to their operations. And so at the World Economic Forum in Africa and beyond, we believe that organizations that integrate ESG consideration tend to be better positioned for the futures in terms of competitiveness. They'll attract the best of talents, entice foreign and local capital to flock into their operations. Their improved productivity and adaptability to new technologies and regulations that surround and define their businesses, and overall boost financial performance. These are some of the businesses that we see likely to succeed better than others in Africa and beyond. And so the calling is quite simple. We really applaud the partnership that we're here to celebrate today and encourage all of the stakeholders to embrace ESG and to get themselves ready for the future of business. Thank you very much.
Great. Let's appreciate him with a clap. In absentia, definitely, but via video. This moment, let me welcome Andre, who is here with us. But before he comes, let me just read a few things about you. Andre Bodanov is the principal and interim CEO of Risk Insights. His professional career spans around the globe, working in the banking space in Russia during the perestroika, to a Fortune 500 multinational company as a senior executive responsible for finance and treasury in various regions and continents. Mr. Andre is co-chair of the World Economic Forum New Champions Community Board Chapter, South Africa. He is Triumph Ember Graduate, International Directors Program by INSEAD, Certified Management Accountant by Institute of Management Accountants USA, member of the Association of Financial Professionals USA, Certified Treasury Professional by AFP USA, and fellow member of the Institute of Directors South Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Andre.
Good morning. I must confess, it's my first time in Kenya, my first time in Nairobi. When before traveling, I was talking to a very good friend of mine who is Kenyan, and he suggested to learn one important word, and I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. He first said smile. I said, well, I traveled quite a bit in Africa, unfortunately, again, first time in Kenya. Smile. So try. And he said, while smiling, to anyone you're meeting, you should say, very, very big smile, Jumbo. And that opens any doors in Kenya. I hope I pronounce it correctly. So, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning, and welcome to the launch of cooperation between Risk Insights and Nairobi Securities Exchange for ESG. Firstly, let me thank Mr. Jeffrey Adundo, CEO of Nairobi Securities Exchange, and your team, Mr. Adundo, for hosting all of us today. We are very pleased to see the great online support as well as support in the room, and thank you for sharing your time with us today. This partnership is very important to us as Risk Insights to work together with the Nairobi Securities Exchange to support East Africa transition to sustainable future. I also would like to extend warm wishes from founder and former MD of Risk Insights, Dr. Anushka Bogdanov, who I know she's online, who unfortunately is not here today. The world has entered a new era of governance. Why would ESG GPS be important at a time of a global transition towards stakeholder capitalism, carbon neutrality, social inclusivity, and governance beyond compliance for the capital markets participant in Nairobi Securities Exchange? And how will ESG GPS assist in driving long-term sustainability and building long-term value creation for Kenya? Through the ESG GPS ratings and other ESG GPS sustainable products, stakeholders can measure actual empirical, independent, and consistent evidence of reporting and track company ESG maturity. The tool helps navigate companies and provide stakeholders with meaningful ESG materiality information. X-ray and other products supplement of ESG GPS ratings, but can also be used on a standalone basis. Risk Insights is the largest ESG data provider on the continent. We're currently rating more than 500 companies, and we keep counting. All of that done using machine learning and artificial intelligence. It is the only rating agency that rates on whole entire exchange in the world. Like Nairobi Securities Exchange, we launch also a couple of other exchanges in Africa and quite a few more coming. It has been recognized internationally by the World Economic Forum in 2020 and 2021, and more recently received the Best ESG Data Provider Africa Award from the Environmental Finance, among other prestigious awards. ESG GPS is used exclusively by PwC, one of the 4 largest auditing companies in the world for the continent, and I'm very pleased to see today the representative of PwC Kenya here. It is the first model built for Africa by Africans. I trust this significant cooperation is being launched at an important juncture of the Kenya. As new president, His Excellency Dr. William Ruto and his administration set the tone for a decisive breakthrough the business as usual economic policies and carry out bold economic reforms in a coherent fashion to accelerate job creation and leave no one behind in the empowerment process while making strong strides towards carbon neutrality to attract impact funding for Kenya. More importantly, to protect the planet and our people and drive economic activity through the good governance. Now, let me introduce Risk Insights head of the Data Lab, who will take you through the cadence of the ESG GPS model, together with some results that will reflect the maturity of ESG in Kenya. At this stage, I would like to call Dr. Shabat.
Good morning, everyone, and it will be my pleasure to navigate you through the cadence of ESG GPS, as well as some disclosure result for Kenya. ESG is a complex subject matter, and the discipline is still quite fluid in the world. Regulators, the capital markets, together with the asset managers and banks, as well as various stakeholders in the auditing and reporting world, are trying to standardize ESG as a discipline for companies. The complexity of ESG is measuring non-financial and structured data into structured data that will impact company performance in the long run. Most integrated and sustainability reports are largely narrative with very minimal information that is numeric and measurable. Unstructured contain very important information that needs to be translated for stakeholders. This data is in various formats such as PDF, web pages, news, and images. Risk Insight ESG GPS model has been able to synthesize unstructured data from integrated reports, website, all mandatory and voluntary information from all sources available using natural language processing into a structure and a algorithm using TF-IDF. This also includes news feeds. Using artificial intelligence and machine learning, ESG GPS has collated all information of listed company from Nairobi Securities Exchange regarding the ESG and been able to provide a rating of a company relative to its peer group. This rating takes into account best practice materiality variables against the financial performance of the company over a long run average time period. We have rated every listed company on the Nairobi Securities Exchange. The E in ESG takes into consideration how well an organization acts as a steward of its physical environment, including the use of natural resources and natural capital. In the table presented, you will note that not all the companies have reported for 2021. Let me guide you into 2020's result. You will notice that there are very few companies in banking, energy, insurance, manufacturing and allied, telecommunication, and real estate investment. There is some ESG disclosure among some of the companies. Within the telecommunication sector, Safaricom has most amount of disclosure compared to most companies in Kenya. There are 6 sectors that have not reported any environmental elements. This table indicates the ESG maturity for an environmental disclosure perspective. ESG GPS has collated all international best practice materiality variables that needs to be disclosed per sector going forward. The S factor is critical to determine how a company manages its social inclusivity and social reporting within the company, taking into account the well-being of its employee as well as its responsibility of its role in society. This impacts the brand and reputation as well as talent management going forward. Compared to the environmental disclosure seen on the previous slide, social maturity or social disclosure for the Nairobi Securities Exchange is much higher but still requires improvement. From the table presented, we can see that other variables within the social elements are reported but still remain immature, as some sectors have no social reporting altogether on these elements. ESG GPS indicate that in total there are 72,627 individual employees across the 11 sectors for 2021. The majority of the employees are from the bank sector. The average percentage of female employees out of the total employees among all the sectors are around 9%. Only in the bank sector where the female percentage is above 50%, and there is a clear improvement year to year. Gender diversity is a key component of social inclusivity from a global perspective. Most companies throughout the globe are working through this social transformation from a C-suite board as well as female management perspective. Please note that 2021 versus 2020, the number of employees is dropped. Is also a function of companies that have not reported to date. ESG GPS has several governance materiality factors that is taken into account. In fact, there are over 30 odd variables that our rating tool measures and monitors. However, for the sake of time, I have included just the board independency as one of the materiality factors that I would like. The independence of board impact on risk management and the 3 line of defense. The most independent board for Kenya is the energy and petroleum sector together with banking. I hope, ladies and gentlemen, I have shared the cadence of the model and some very high level result of the ESG GPS. Should you be interested in subscribing in any of our products and services, please contact us at info@riskinsight.co.za. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We can appreciate him in absentia to the club. And just to comfort you, Andre, I'm sure you'll get to learn another word as well that will make your doors open. That word is asante. If you say asante, it just says thank you. I'm sure Kuria will explain further how it will open those doors. Thank you so much. So at this moment, allow me to introduce Edward Kerich. And very quickly, let me just read about him. With over 18 years experience providing audit governance, risk management and consulting services to PwC clients in Kenya, Tanzania, Sudan and in the UK, Edward currently leads the risk assurance services in Eastern Africa. As a director, Edward is responsible for leading various organizational risk management engagements, internal audit assignments and board governance training. Ladies and gentlemen, Edward Kerich. Karibu sana.
our hosts, Mr. CEO Geoffrey Odundo, the Nairobi Securities Exchange, CEO of Risk Insights, Andre, welcome to Nairobi. Karibu, that is what Asante, Karibu, they go hand in hand. Distinguished guests, everyone who is here and online. I'd like to appreciate the initiative that NSC and Risk Insight have taken in pushing forward the agenda and the initiative around ESG and ESG reporting. We see different companies approach some of these considerations differently. We have innovators and people who are at the forefront making voluntary disclosures and discussions. And we see others, as you've heard Alexandre on the video right now, talking about others with limited or no disclosures at all. It doesn't mean they are not doing anything. Sometimes they are not reporting. So the tool that is now available through Risk Insight, having also partnered with PwC, should enable companies to know where to start and how to take that forward. So at PwC, we've also made our own commitments towards ESG. We have a plan and a process actually that we are taking on the various pillars around ESG. And how do we see sustainability? We see this as that ability or the capacity to create that long-term value through comprehensive focus on ESG for various companies, looking at those factors around ESG that can actually improve the various considerations around ESG. As you've heard, a number of these things are actually non-financial disclosures. And many organizations have put various comprehensive structures and processes, frameworks for ending up with how financial disclosures are reported with the various standards available. For ESG, it's somewhat of a new area to many, and all these tools are now available to actually support and guide the various companies in reporting. How we've seen and how we see various companies responding to this, often driven by regulatory compliance. And where there is no regulatory compliance, you are looking at various factors such as the voluntary stock exchange guidelines for disclosures that companies are following. We're also seeing response as a result of the demand and request by various stakeholders. For example, rating agencies. I think all rating agencies now will have ESG as part of the areas they will assess for various companies. Post-COVID, we saw globally a lot of funds availed towards the recovery of various companies, organizations, and sectors with a priority on ESG compliant initiatives and activities. So there is clear benefits that companies will be able to derive as we go forward. From a brand value and the availability of that information to various companies, we actually see companies with those comprehensive disclosures around ESG getting better value, getting better interaction with various stakeholders. And we are getting to see situations where analysts sitting in London, in Singapore, in the US, can be able to pick the financial and non-financial information, including ESG, of various companies and actually make their own assessment, independent assessment on either to invest or otherwise. Now, from a benefit perspective that we really encourage everyone, we encourage our clients as well to think about is just that ability to build reputation and trust, disclosing what they are doing from a transparency perspective. We get involved sometimes in giving assurance around what is disclosed. And the reality is, because of that limited framework and processes for putting together some of these non-financial disclosures, there's a lot of ideal positions put forward, such that when you actually go to interrogate what is disclosed, sometimes it's not backed up by comprehensive data and information on the background. So there is, of course, a need to just rethink through how do you make sure whatever you put forward is completely accurate and reflects what is happening on the ground. The flip side is a terminology that has been coined. It's called greenwashing, where people want to look good from an ESG perspective out there without necessarily being as good in reality. So something to think about. Also from a funding and capital attraction, a really significant factor that companies who are ESG compliant are getting the benefits of reasonably cheaper, accessible, and green funds that has been seen to be good. And also from a competitive advantage. Certainly there's a lot more goodwill that companies are able to enjoy with a good level or comprehensive plans around ESG. If you look at the discussions at various like annual general meetings, for example, with shareholders, and I know most of the business leaders in the room, you will know that that's a conversation point that many of your stakeholders will actually be looking to see what have you disclosed, what are you doing around ESG. And the flip side is that there are significant risks if you also don't move towards compliance. We also see significant contribution by ESG towards organizations' strategy and risk management initiatives and responses. You had the CEO mention the initiatives from the regulators, such as the Central Bank of Kenya, starting with the banking sector around the various risk management framework and guidelines, which is actually getting the banks to reflect around what's the exposures around climate-related risks. So it is something that I believe all sectors need to think about and actually get involved in. So I'd like to conclude by just reflecting on what was presented by Alexandre. You will have seen the disclosures that were available made by various companies. Again, I repeat, I see a number of organizations having taken various steps, various initiatives, but very limited reporting around that. And those were the areas that were seen to be opportunities for improvement and disclosure. That will give that credibility and assurance to the various stakeholders around that, including the regulators. And I do hope in the near future we will have, I would say, 100% disclosures by the listed and non-listed entities in Kenya, but certainly something that everyone needs to get involved, everyone needs to play their part. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Edward Kerich. This moment via video link as well live. We're going to be joined by Charles Modua, and as he prepares his video, let me just tell you who he is. He's just our neighbor right here, the NSC. He's the Chief Executive Officer, Stanbic Bank Kenya and South Sudan. He has over 3 decades of experience in financial and banking sectors across various African markets and is ranked among Africa's best 50 leaders 2021 by a Reputation Poll International LLC. Charles, if you can hear me, karibu sana.
Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can.
Great. Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for inviting me to speak today, to our distinguished guests, to our fellow speakers, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, and I'm privileged and honored to launch this noble, or to attend the launch of this noble partnership between the Nairobi Securities Exchange and, of course, the Risk Insights in driving the sustainability agenda in Kenya and in the East African region broadly. I'll just start by sharing a story which our central bank governor always uses. And he says that in Ghana, an old man was planting cocoa plants in the field, and this young man walked over to him and said, old man, you're planting those cocoa plants, but by the time they grow and are ready to be harvested, you will no longer be there. And this old man looked at this young man and says, that is true, my son, but what I can also tell you is that my whole life I harvested and ate from cocoa plants that had been planted by people that were no longer there. So it is also important for me to plant cocoa plants for the future generation. I think today for us marks that journey, that we are planting cocoa plants for the future generation. because that's what is sustainability and what it is about. That today we plant future crops that we know we may not harvest, that we know by the time they ripen, we will not be there. But our future generations will be able to benefit and to enjoy them and be in that privilege of sharing and knowing that our forefathers did take into account this. I also want to recognize and congratulate the Nairobi Stock Exchange for taking this bold initiative and shaping and engaging corporates and the general private sector in the sustainability conversation. By inviting people like ourselves, of course, PwC, World Economic Forum, Safaricom, and other large corporates to this party, and all the other members who are on this forum today, it's a giant step that you've said that let's do something about it, and let's start somewhere. And this requires all of us to have our hands on deck and to cooperate and to support ourselves in this critical journey. As I was reflecting on this, I also thought about the challenges facing our country and the region. I reflected about how financial institutions can drive and support the sustainability agenda. I also thought about how Stanbic can be part of this journey and can also drive ESG and some of the actions that we are taking. The sustainability conversation has to be purpose-driven, because unless organizations make a deliberate, conscious, and intentional effort to drive the agenda, it can become very difficult. At Stanbic, we say Kenya is our home, we drive a growth. And for us, it is about how we view sustainability, and it has to be ingrained in our purpose and the things that we do. And unless we do that, it then becomes very difficult to execute and to deliver. For our purpose, for us, our purpose angles how we think about it. It is ingrained in how we do our business, our strategy for Kenya. It is also, we are also convinced that environmental sustainability, social cohesion, good governance are all inextricably linked. By providing solutions that meet the development needs of this country, her people, and the economic well-being of our clients, and indeed potential clients. For the financial sector, ESG and sustainability objectives must be paramount in the way we do business. And we are reminded of the financial crisis of 2008, which crippled global financial systems and the consequences of which we are still recovering from, even a decade later. At the core of this was poor governance. And we have seen many companies facing significant backlash and penalties from regulators due to improper governance. And we would like to bring sustainability and ESG at the core of this conversation. As we dialogue on this topic, we must remember the significant challenges we as a country have to face, and as a continent as well. Africa remains poor on energy, food security remains a challenge, we are still grappling with social injustices, gender inequality, unmet educational needs, lack of basic needs like water, electricity, and infrastructure. And all these drive us into a situation where we have to balance between sustainability and industrial growth. And it's a debate that you constantly hear. Should we exploit our natural resources or not? And what should we do differently? And I know a lot of private sector companies find themselves in this very difficult situation of making that decision and making that choice. But the flip side of all our challenges is that we have a young and enterprising population that is resilient and ambitious, and that is willing to solve for problems and finding outcomes that will give us a win-win situation. As financial institutions, we must therefore spearhead change by working to address these and solve these challenges. So what has Stanbic done? Allow me to share how Stanbic has approached this. We're not only informed by our purpose to drive Kenya's growth, but also our regulators. I've heard our previous speakers talk about the Central Bank of Kenya in October 2021 rolled out the climate risk guidelines that augmented the Kenya Bankers Association Sustainable Finance Initiative, urging financial institutions to pay attention to the impact on our environment. And to this end, all banks had to submit by 30th of June their climate change guidelines and sustainability guidelines to the central bank. And from 1st of September, which is this week or end of this month, we must submit our first reports. And by end of next year, we must have full disclosure in our reports. This is an important milestone for the financial sector in terms of compliance. Further to local regulations, as part of the wider Standard Bank Group, we are also guided by the global best practice and standards, such as the Equator Principles, which we are a member of, and the UN Principles for Responsible Banking, of which Standard Bank and Stanbic are a founding member. And we currently hold the position of co-chair of the Principles of Responsible Banking Board in Africa. So we are very much involved and engaged in this process, even as Standard Bank Group and as Stanbic. We have identified 7 social, economic, and environmental impact areas in which we believe we can make the most significant impact through our core business activities. So we have made a deliberate choice to identify 7 areas we would like to drive and actually focus on. And these are financial inclusion, job creation and enterprise development, infrastructure, trade, climate change and sustainable finance, education and health. Because as I've said at the beginning, unless we solve some of the poverty issues and the global inequalities, we can also not be able to address the sustainability conversation. And therefore, as a financial institution, we have identified areas that we've gone out of our way to start addressing and to start dealing with. And you'll find some of the actions I'm going to articulate just now demonstrate those actions that we have done. So each of these impact areas, we've committed resources and our expertise to drive sustainable value. I therefore urge all organizations to define their impact areas and drive adoption and champion the change. An example for us is where we've made this impact is number 1. We were the lead arrangers for the first ever green bond in Kenya and in East Africa that was listed both at the Nairobi Securities Exchange and the London Stock Exchange. This was a medium-term green bond to raise funds for construction of eco-friendly, purpose-built student accommodation. So by so doing, we're looking at sustainable growth, not just from a point of view of an eco-friendly green bond, but we're also addressing a social need, which is student accommodation. So when we look at the goals that we've set out there, which is around how to include in education, we are addressing the education need, but simultaneously also doing it in a sustainable manner. And that's what we're urging all other corporates to do that. Another example is the Green Light Planet Initiative, which Stanbic, alongside other partners, have provided $75 million for sustainably linked facilities to offer off-the-grid solar solutions for homes. Again, we're addressing the importance of social development and also providing electricity and rural development by offering green energy, which is sustainable. Again, a demonstration of what we can do to provide growth of Kenya, address poverty issues, but at the same time, do it in a sustainable manner. And we will continue to do this. So at Stanbic, we continue to enhance our capability. We are clear on our targets and have staggered our transition by committing to achieving net zero carbon emissions from our own operations for newly built facilities by 2030. So only new facilities will be sustainable by 2030. For existing facilities by 2040, and from our portfolio financed emissions by 2050. In conclusion, I want to highlight that ESG and sustainability is everyone's responsibility and a journey we must take together. We must pay attention to little things that matter. I mean, James Carr in his book, and talking about the New Zealand rugby team, he spoke about the principle of Waka Papa, which is being good ancestors. We have to be good ancestors. We have to be Waka Papa. This is a challenge for us all as we look in the future. And in the Bible, they spoke about to whom much is given, much is required. As leaders, let us use our influence and position to shape the direction of these conversations, not just for us, but for future generations. As the future generations harvest the cocoa, let them remember our forefathers planted this for us. I want to say congratulations, NSC and Insights. We are fully behind you, and we believe this is the future for our generations. I thank you.
Thank you so much, Charles. And wow, please stand to the person seated next to you and tell them, "Welcome, Papa." That's it. That's it. We have to be good ancestors. That's a good one, especially in the African context. Ladies and gentlemen, we are now nearing the close, and I know we have had quite a number of keynote addresses. But towards the end now, we have Nicholas Mulila, who is here with us. And Nicholas, I had your company mentioned. That means you're doing a good job. Let me just tell you something very quick about him. He's the Chief Risk and Security Officer at Safaricom PLC, responsible for the business risk management strategy, cybersecurity management, revenue assurance, AML CTF program, insurance ethics and compliance, and physical security. He joined Safaricom in 2001 as a senior management accountant in the finance division and has risen steadily through the ranks to serve the company in various capacities. He has over 20 years experience in strategy formulation, execution, financial management, business analyst, risk management, and corporate governance. Nicholas, we can't wait to hear from you. Please, a round of applause to him as well as he speaks. And Nicholas told me 10 minutes is too much time. He does 5. Thank you. Karibu.
Thank you. Good morning. Our host, Geoffrey, CEO of NSC, I like calling it NSC, fellow speakers, I'm very delighted to be here this morning to share my experience with you, to share what you've done in Safaricom. But before I just go to what you've been doing, I just want to say that everything that we do in every organization impacts the environment we operate in. Everything. Be it our processes, be it the products that we churn out, all of those impact the environment that we basically operate in. We have seen a very, very keen interest on investors in terms of ESG reporting and ESG disclosures. And I would like to say that a few months ago, actually, we had a 3-hour meeting with one of our key investors, and we were taking them through our ESG program and some of the disclosures, and they were very interested, to see what we are doing. And one of the questions I was asking myself, I think a number of years ago, when we listed, I think we started our share at 5, the APO was 5 bob, and within a few months, we went to 2 shillings. And one of the things that I kept on asking myself, what is it that investors do not understand? Because by that time I was expecting we'll be hitting 10, 15, and that kind of thing. And when I reflect on today, I would just want to say that if those days everyone was able to disclose their ESG program, they were able to disclose what they are doing in this particular area, then obviously I think by that time our share would have hit 15 or something like that. And I think those are some of the results that you see when proper disclosures are not made, especially those are not mandated by regulators. And the other day I was actually looking at some research that had been done by McKinsey, and basically they were saying that they surveyed a number of customers on a number of customers and investors, and investors were saying that they are actually ready to put a premium on companies that have embraced ESG. And I think that is where we are going into, in these particular years. And I just want to now reflect quickly on Safaricom. So we started this journey when it was not defined, I think sometimes in 2012. And what we did first was to just identify a number of key material matters that we wanted to deal with in terms of sustainability. We were just talking about sustainability. And I think that time we were saying we'd like this organization to be there for our children and our children's children. I think that was the deal. So we wanted to make sure that we develop a huge organization which is successful, which is basically sustainable. And therefore, we looked at a number of areas that we wanted to make sure that we can address at that particular time. And all these 3 particular areas were part of it. And we started with looking at how then we can be environmental friendly. And I want to say here that we have about over 4,000 sites. And those sites of ours, of course, they are run by by grid, which is KPLC, what as we call it, and we have quite a number which are actually run 24 hours by diesel. And then you can just imagine, the kind of environmental pollution that whatever we want to deliver to you, then then causes in terms of environment. And one of the commitments that we've made for ourselves is to make sure that by 2050 we'll be able to hit net zero. And we have taken quite a number of initiatives to deal with this. We are looking at, in the next 5 years, to have at least 90% of all our sites basically running on green energy. And actually, that program has begun, and we do hope that we can get there. In terms of improving environment, I think so far we planted over about 1 million trees. Is it enough? My answer is no. We are looking at doing another 5 million in the next 5 years. And we're also looking at how then we recycle some of the e-waste that we have. If you look at, I think these things, the handsets here, in 1 year, we all throw these handsets away. And there's a time we were actually asking for those devices, please bring them to our office. And what we are trying to do is to make sure that we collect this waste, we can recycle it, we can probably destroy it, so that we just basically protect the environment. And it's something that we basically continue doing. If you come to organization, we have quite a number of places where you can actually, go and drop any waste that you have, any plastics that you have, and it's something that we continue, basically we continue to run. A few years ago, in partnership with the NEMA, we started now training, especially the informal sector, on elements of waste collection, and of course electronic waste repair shops, and it's something that we want to continue basically doing. Now, when it comes to elements of inclusivity and gender, quite a huge challenge for us and for all of us here. Today, if we look at our organization, we actually at 50-50 gender, both women and men. But the question will be, you're at 50-50, but at what levels? And that's what we are currently addressing. If we look at our senior management level, what we call senior managers to the executive, we are at about 35%, which we still have 15%, basically to work on. And we continue to basically work on that. Another element we have been very key is to also ensure that we include those of us, and we usually call them enabled differently. And I know in Kenya we like calling them disabled. Call them enabled differently. I think across the organization we are at 3.1% now, and we would like to go to 5%, in the next by 2025 actually. And one of the ways to ensure then that you include them and you can have them in the organization is also through training. And if you look at what we are doing with some of the schools that train the differently enabled, we'll have some programs with them. We are working closely with them to ensure that we can empower them, to be able to come and get jobs and work for us. And even in terms of just ensuring that whenever they want to access our services, we do something. For example, if it's about the Braille, we make sure that when they call our call center, they're able to be served, just like the way you guys will be served. Then in terms of just also ensuring that we empower some of those we call marginalized, and here I want to speak about the youth and women. We basically did start a program, we call it Women for Business, just making sure that we can help women become entrepreneurs over time. And when we began, we realized that actually most of the ladies, they were more inclined towards doing businesses around the marketing area, just around marketing side. And because of that, we started another program, which we call it Women in Technology, just to encourage women to actually start getting involved in doing even bigger business, not just the small type businesses. In terms of youth, also continuously supporting youth businesses across the country and doing some form of mentorship. In fact, nowadays, before we launch any product, one of the things that we like doing is to also get a view of some of those guys who are even in high school. And we'll be asking them, what do you think? We'll get to make sure that we include them in whatever it is that we want to do. Zero harm culture, just ensuring that when you interact with our products, you are safe. If you are working for us, you are safe. Whether you are a partner on the supply side, whether you are a partner on the marketing side, basically you are safe. A big element that we have been driving. And then lastly, one element which people don't think is as big social issue, and I know CEO, you talked about it, Geoffrey, is around the data, customer data protection. Every day, I think my team and I interact with at least 1.2 billion records every single 24 hours. And those records have to be, we have to make sure that those records are protected. And you talked about basically what your staff were telling you, no, you cannot, you are not going to put security on my iPhone because it's mine and my data must be protected. And we are going to continue seeing these things happening. So the question for us, for all of us here, will just be one. Are we going to wait for regulation? The answer is no. We just need to, develop that particular culture. Then lastly, on governance, big one for us. And I think the first time we did report and we put out our sustainability report out there, it had quite a number of areas, what we are doing in terms of governance, what we are doing in terms of ethics and compliance, whatever it is that we are doing with our employees, and all those kind of things. And there was one table which basically showed how many staff we had separated with for various reasons. And we call it conflict of interest. And that is what actually the media picked. They said, Safaricom, I always remember that sentence. They said Safaricom fired 143 staff because of fraud. And therefore, this organization is completely a fraudulent organization. And then we kept on asking ourselves, are we going to report again next year? And we said, yes, we're going to continue, reporting. And during that time, we had also started, some collaboration with the banks, basically to try and ensure that we curb fraud against our customers. And one of the things that I told them is that, you guys, you don't report this thing, but it is what is going to kill all of us as an industry. And we were saying that, look, I separate an employee for whatever reason, and the next day they're given a big job in your organization because you think they're very experienced, and within a year they have stolen from you, and you have a problem. And therefore, we said we shall continue making these reports. And if you look at the numbers, they are even less than 1% of the whole population of the organization. So really, I think just reflecting the environment that we basically all operate in. And therefore, we continue to make sure that we are strong in governance as possible, a lot of ethics, awareness, and training across the organization, a lot of training around privacy, because we interact with a lot of customer data, a lot of elements around the people we work with. We do have a strong supplier code of conduct and ethics for businesses in Kenya. The people who work with us, they have signed off, and I want to say very strongly that 100% of our suppliers will have signed off this code of conduct. But the question is it just for purposes of compliance, or should we then ensure that when you sign off, you actually basically leave the talk? I think, we basically follow the UN principles in terms of ensuring that we have a responsible sourcing in our supply chain, and we continue to do that. I wouldn't say we are 100%, but I'm looking at us going towards perfection. And I think in terms of governance at the top level, if you look at our board today, I think we have about, again, 30% women, and we do hope that we will get to 50% in the very near future. We have actually the required number now of independent directors. So, getting to a point where we feel comfortable. But I think for me, the most important thing is to move from just complying with the, with ESG requirements and that kind of thing, to just basically living it, to introducing that kind of culture. So I think as a business, we should and we must take a firm stand on ESG matters, whether it's about reporting, whether it's about making sure that, we can run a proper and sustainable business. And as I look at it, and I know we may have done a lot, just like Andrew said, if we are the only ones who do it, and probably others stand big, I think we need to, to continue to, to push the levels of information around ESG, how then we also measure, the levels and what organizations are doing. And then with this particular standard, then we can be able to say that, my organization is at this particular rating, and therefore we're in a good position. And we can continue to, to look at that. And I think for all business leaders, in terms of just partnerships, we must continue to ensure that we value the partnerships we have, whether it's at industry, at regional and global level. So as I close, I just want to congratulate the NSC and Risk Insights for actually bringing us together today. And I do hope that we will continue to have this particular engagement. I do hope that we are going to now push ESG to the next level, not only for all listed organizations, but for the others who are also not listed. Thank you very much, and have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nicholas, and we must appreciate that you have started this journey way back. I think the NSC just the other day was hosting Sanda right here, UN Global Compact, and we appreciate that she was bred from there, right? Yeah, it's also good to say that Nicholas means victory. That means wherever he goes, he oozes a yes we can attitude. So we can do it, as he has said, not just complying, but living it. You must thank me because I probably saved the best for the last, because it's only ladies who go to speak now. We're going to start with Wanjiru Kirima. Wanjiru is a leader in the African financial industry with a particular emphasis on sustainability. She has more than 25 years global finance and pension experience in executive management, that is in Shell, FirstRand, Mercer and Stanlib. And she has worked in the UK, South Africa, Kenya, Namibia, Botswana, Uganda and Swaziland. Ladies and gentlemen, by video, we have Wanjiru.
Good morning and Jambo. My name is Wanjiru Kirima, and I am the chairperson of the Nairobi chapter of Risk Insights. Firstly, I would like to thank my friend, Jeff Odundo, the CEO of the Nairobi Securities Exchange, for hosting this auspicious event. And secondly, I would like to welcome all the guests who have made the time today to attend this event, both physically and virtually. We at Risk Insights are very pleased to be partnering with the Nairobi Securities Exchange, and I am especially proud as a Kenyan that we as a country are moving towards the recognition that long-term success can only be achieved through a Finance Plus model, taking into account the 4 pillars of long-term return, which are people, planet, profit, and purpose. This is a very important partnership for Risk Insights, as we have already rated all the companies on the Nairobi Securities Exchange, and we hope that this partnership will move the sustainability needle significantly within the Kenyan listed environment. Risk Insight is an AI-driven sustainability risk model. I want to thank once again all the participants who will be attending the function today. Kwaheri from Johannesburg.
Well, please put your hands together for Wanjiru. I wasn't worried because 3 minutes 4, it's done. Thank you so much for that. I think she understood that time is nigh. And ladies and gentlemen, at this moment, in closing now, you can be assured we are closing. I want to introduce another lady I respect because of her work on the sustainability journey, and that's none other than Wendy Boet. And let me just tell you about her. She is the Senior Officer Corporate Affairs and Investor Relations right here at the Nairobi Securities Exchange. She has extensive experience in financial communications and investor relations, and is very passionate in sustaining the environment and elevating the suffering of disadvantaged people around the world, and eager to play a part through her life and career. And I must add this sentence, which she did not tell me. She's also very passionate about conserving our wildlife. If you want to prove me wrong, go to that wall and see her in another way. Please, a round of applause to Wendy as she comes to close the session.
Thank you and good morning. Geoffrey Odundo, Chief Executive, Nairobi Securities Exchange. Andrei Bogdanov, Principal and CEO, Risk Insights. Alexander Rafal, Head of Business Engagement, Middle East and Africa, World Economic Forum. Charles Gudiwa, Chief Executive Officer, Stanbic Bank, Kenya. Nicholas Mulila, Chief Officer Risk and Security, Safaricom, Edward Kerich, Partner PwC, all our online audience, esteemed guests, ladies and gentlemen. Time is well spent, so I'll be very brief. As we wrap up this event, I would like to highlight the next steps for the NSE listed companies following our partnership with Risk Insights. It's been a wonderful session today, and we are proud to celebrate the advent of ESG ratings in our market as we inch closer to introducing an ESG index in the future, which will track performance of companies with superior ESG practices. So the ESG GPS platform will be used as a foundation for the NSE to facilitate end-to-end suite of sustainability reporting solutions to support Kenyan listed companies and improve the reporting process across all the three pillars of E, S, and G. So listed companies in Kenya were granted 1 year grace period, which I think lapses in the next 2 months or so, to comply with the ESG requirements that were launched in November last year. Thereafter, you will be expected to include sustainability or ESG reporting in your annual integrated reports. So listed companies have been given the opportunity to decide whether you will have a separate sustainability report or have an integrated annual report. So some companies are already ahead of the curve in relation to their internal ESG reporting process. However, all listed companies should dedicate time and resources to verify their ESG framework and align with the ESG manual, as well as determine what steps are needed to be taken to be fully compliant before the grace period elapses. So through this partnership, we expect that listed companies, asset managers, regulators, and other stakeholders will benefit from a flexible platform that collects, measures, and analyzes corporate sustainability disclosure data. When organizations obtain a real-time picture of the diverse data sets that constitute an accurate understanding of ESG, they can analyze it, individualize it for executives and for specific teams to predict issues in advance and make corrections as quickly as possible and lay the foundation for a virtuous cycle of resilience. In short, unified data science, as we are witnessing today, is key in realizing the world-changing promise of ESG. While there's a growing awareness that ESG is the right thing for companies and investors to focus on, it has become nearly impossible today for investors, partners, and the public to independently measure and verify how companies are progressing towards their sustainability goals at scale. I think we've all heard of greenwashing. So the solution to this challenge starts with data. It's only through data analytics and AI and the ability to process vast amounts of ESG data that organizations and investors can prove that ESG actually means something that can actually make a positive difference in the world. The ultimate goal should not just be an yearly report that addresses an organization's ESG priorities, but rather an ability for companies to measure and report ESG progress on a timely manner, and for investors and other stakeholders to be able to verify it with data. Through NSE's collaboration with Risk Insights, this is now possible. In conclusion, ESG reporting will become mainstream for major companies in the near future as regulatory changes make ESG disclosure a mandatory requirement are on the rise. So the NSC, through its strategy, aims to drive ESG transition for the national economy and is well placed to support businesses and other organizations with their ESG efforts and initiatives to unlock value for clients, for shareholders, for stakeholders, and the wider society. In closing, research examines that relationship between ESG and financial performance overwhelmingly suggests a positive correlation between ESG performance and operational efficiencies, stock performance, and lower cost of capital. So companies that pay attention to ESG concerns don't compromise their financial returns. Thank you and have a lovely rest of the day.
Thank you so much, Wendy, and continue championing this particular course. Ladies and gentlemen, I am the last person now to speak, and you can tell mine is I'm looking at the food now. I want to appreciate all our online participants, all those who joined, and we want to tell you asante sana. That's our way of saying thank you, as we taught Andre today. And also to appreciate our keynote address speakers today. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Maina Shege. If you like, you can call me MC, and I was your MC today. And I want to leave you with this deep statement. Let's be Waka Papa. Remember that? Thank you so much. Food is served. For the ones who are online, grab something. Asanteni sana. Bye-bye. If you, Andre, Edward, Jeff, we kindly request to take one picture with you for the records. So, one photo for the guests. I want to request the gentleman at the back, come help me remove this.